call the Charter Revision Commission special meeting of March 6th to order. Can we go around the room for roll call, please?
Sheila Bailey.
Nikki Price.
Tom Cremona.
I'm Mike Ludwig.
Rob Anderson.
Anne Marie Masuda.
Zach Sinoni.
And Ken Nelson. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 27th, 2025's regular meeting.
Still moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any comments, corrections, or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then tonight we have a special guest, John Wilcox, the Director of Finance, to take care of Chapter 6, Finance and Taxation. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so questions. Page 16 on the charter.
Thank you. No. It's fine. I take this. I take a lot more.
Hello, Laura.
Do you want to just take the minutes? Sure.
I'm gonna cheat and take them from the video tomorrow.
All right, so what questions do we have for John tonight?
Well, we had first, I think, John, I had given you the proposed timeline changes that would have to occur if we had a referendum, because we have to plan for it regardless, because we won't know. And I think some of your questions were, the 7% is going to kick in at the time the council would normally set the budget. So I think it's some of how that timeline will work. And I think I gave you a copy of this, John, the commissioners already have it, the proposed difference in timeline that would have to occur. For instance, in the very first section where departmental estimates, we're guessing to accommodate the 30 days notice for referendum, which is actually a little bit longer than that because it takes about 7 days to get it in the newspaper. To get it in the newspaper and then have enough notice for the 30 days. So department estimates would start at 145 days before the end of the fiscal year. Duties of the town manager would be at 110 days. For the town manager's budget, duties of the council, 100 days before the fiscal end of the year, and then still the 20 days from the public hearing. But I think that what we wanted you to go over were questions about how the 7% is actually going to be based off from. And then I think you had some historical data you wanted to share with the commission.
Yeah. Right, I mean, basically it looks to me like with this, you want to have the referendum, or referendum would be held at the end of May?
The referendum, I tentatively just put in there the third Tuesday of May so that we would have an expectation for when it happens, when we would schedule it.
Right.
And I think, Tuesday's a good day because people are used to voting on Tuesday, but that's certainly.
The farther away you go from the year end, the more uncertainty that you introduce into the budgeting process. But I mean, other than that, this would be doable for something like this. I didn't really have any concerns with that. Everything would kick back. Obviously, all of our department heads I would have to have the budget ready to open for the department heads to start looking at their individual budgets. We kicked that up into December and January, and so it would be, it would be doable, but like I said, there's a little more uncertainty involved.
What is the drop dead date for you to get the tax bills out with the adjusted mill rate?
So we produce the tax bills at the beginning of June. Okay, so we send a file to Quality Data Services, that's our billing service and our software system for the tax package. And we usually send that early June. They produce the bills, we mail them out. Last year, it ended up being a little bit later than that, but we try to get them out in the actual mailing of the bills by around the 20th of June. That way it gives some residents like to get in and pay them in advance before July 1st, so we try to do that, accommodate them.
Questions on this?
If we had to go to referendum at that point, it would be more of a scramble, but it would still be doable, I think.
Right. The only reason I asked is because you said the closer to the end of the year we could get, the more certainty you have.
As far as, actually, coming up with our budgeted requests, things like that, more time. More time.
Right.
Gives more certainty as far as what's happening now, gives time, I mean, you never know what's gonna come up and.
And at the state level, I'm assuming.
Exactly,
Right.
that too.
Right. You were talking before. I was thinking after, for you to prepare to make sure you have the data to send out and people get it.
So what happens as far as with state revenue, like now, the governor has already presented his budget for this year. They don't usually take that, I kind of pay attention to see what might come in, but I'm usually basing our departmental estimates on either last year, or if we're in the second year of a biennial budget, I'll take the second year numbers on it. If they change, a lot of times they haven't changed at all. But when you really, it really gets into the beginning of May, and sometimes they don't even adopt the budget until June or July, and we're going based on estimates.
Mm-hmm.
If I know there's a big change that happened we would incorporate that into our currently we would incorporate that into the council deliberations. I'm usually fairly conservative, so I don't have to go down with a revenue number, because that would be, I don't like to do that. But because that would be much harder at that time. So sometimes it'll make things a little easier if the revenue numbers go up significantly. Most of the time they don't change much.
Yeah, so regardless of referendum or no referendum, all of our deliberations, all of our, starting in December, January, we're looking at having all of this probably all taken care of by mid to the end of March, I'm looking at.
Yeah. I didn't bring an extra
So,
copy.
regardless if we're gonna have
The
a
actual
referendum or
adoption
not,
would be like April.
all of this work has to be done months prior to
That
what
would be,
we're
that's
doing
it, like,
now.
that's if we were running this year, this was our make-believe timeline, John, as an
Yeah.
example. And so it would be really, in order to have the days to put in the notice for the referendum, but the council, it looks like would be voting around April 9th. It
Moving
says
everything
12th on
back
your
by
sheet.
about a month.
Right, it would
Yes.
kick everything.
Yeah,
It would kick everything back about a month. Right now, it's the public hearing has to be no later than 60 days prior to year end. So then the adoption is 20 days after that. So we are usually somewhere in the 15th to 20th of May currently, and everything would kick back a month earlier than that
Right.
for this.
And then we discussed the
And
trigger.
that would be okay with your
Yeah, how the
your
trigger is gonna
department
be
in terms of
We need,
moving everything up?
Yeah, we
Okay,
would have to, I mean, we would be able to do it, yeah.
yeah,
It would-
okay.
Okay, Mike, go ahead, Mike.
I'm afraid to ask this, Sheila, because the answer you give me will ruin my night. So the timeline works good for me. I think we should be moving up anyways, but separate discussion. So 7%, it's 7% increase. We have the referendum, I'm saying it's that Thursday, the Tuesday, the third Tuesday of May, whatever that date turns out to be. Because it's a special election, we can have it on one day, right? We don't have to have early voting or absentee.
4 days of early voting for referenda.
What about absentee ballot? I mean,
Absentees are the same, they
so
stay
you
the
would,
same.
we'd have to vote a month, right? So what's that, how long?
So that's 30 days before an election.
And we still, I mean,
absentee ballots become available.
You still have to have early voting in it.
4 days. As of right now, I think they're reviewing some of that. Go ahead.
So I was gonna say 4 days of early voting, but then are there like deadlines to send out absentee ballots associated with that we need to adhere to
Right.
also?
I mean, as much as there's another reason why I can't stand early
Yeah.
voting, there's another reason, other than it's quite frankly unconstitutional, but we'll leave that for another day. So we're covered with this timeline and what I just asked. I like your timeline, I think it works for me, and honestly, I think it works for the voter, because you get the board budget, then you should go right into the town budget, in my opinion. And so you're all doing this, and if there's no referendum, we're done in April, that's great. And then, even if there is any adjustments after that, John has plenty of time before he has to issue, or the director of finance, John, whoever, has plenty of time to make any adjustments. The council has plenty of time, whatever that may be, in case something comes out, state does something different. There's still a lot of time, just as we do with the sewer fee, which we have till June. So I'm just saying, it gives us actually, I think, let's assume most years you're not gonna have a referendum. You know?
Right.
So it gives the council and I think staff a little more breathing room, in my opinion. Right, I mean, here we are,
Right.
almost second week of March, we haven't even seen our budget yet.
And that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
The Board of Ed put their budget in
Right.
already. We should have been sitting down. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't be working on it right now.
So I'm good, I appreciate John being here, I appreciate this timeline works for me, I'm good with it, and I thank you. You guys are
And I
covered.
think, John, you did have some historical data you wanted to share, but I have a question for you. But I just want to point out on that, what is on your chart is April 12th. Council adopts budget by resolution and fixes mill rate if no referendum is pending. So that's at that meeting, if council says it's not going to be over that threshold of
Yeah.
7%. So in the same turn, if it is over that threshold, that meeting is when the council would have to set the question, because you have to approve the question and the explanatory text. So
Awesome.
you would have to do
All the
at
same
that
night.
same meeting.
It's actually, in my opinion, the right
You
way.
would have to be prepared if it looked like whatever's happening in the state, we can't get it under 7 or whatever, then you would have to be prepared to
actually,
address
it's the-
that at that meeting, because we
And
have no wiggle room
And that's a
later.
perfect meeting to do it, though. I mean, it's all done in one, where the public
That's
knows
the
exactly what's
drop
going
dead
on.
date.
Right.
Yeah,
April 12th,
yeah.
April 12th for this year's,
yeah.
but the timeline as far as 20 days after the public hearing, and then the public hearing is 100 days prior to fiscal year, and where it used to be 60.
That makes me even more, I feel better, because if it's happening all the same night, the public knows what's going on, there's no follow-up meeting. Whatever it is set, everyone knows what it is, it's made public, and everything then flows. If there's a referendum, all the stuff flows right after that. So that actually makes sense to me.
Okay.
Well, if there is a referendum, the mill rate doesn't get set till after that referendum.
That's correct.
If there is a referendum. If
Right,
no
and-
referendum, the mill rate would get set in April.
Right, and
Yeah.
that would be not later than 7 days after the referendum.
I'm just saying, even,
Set the mill
but
rate.
it gets set, but if there's something that pops up that still gives, if it doesn't go to referendum, like, again, there's still a little time to
Then
make
the bill rate
the
could be adjusted
Correct,
up to that point.
correct.
Right, well, if we know going into the budget that we're not gonna be near 7%, it buys us a little more time.
Right.
But if we know we have, the school modernization and things are pretty bleak, then we gotta get to work. So,
So my question for this purpose, for the charter revision purpose, is how the verbiage, how you would need that defined as far as the 7%. We've got to add something into this charter, and I certainly don't want to make up the verbiage for it. So 7% of, we've got to define that and kind of come up with the correct, that meets your guidance, John.
Can I ask one quick question about that too? I tried to compare notes from what I had when we had this discussion. And are we certain we said 7% or greater? Or did we say greater than 7%? Because I know it's captured here.
I thought it was 7 or greater commitment.
well,
In that discussion.
it reverts to 7%.
Right.
If the referendum fails. So 7% is okay. It's not, but it is,
I hear what you're saying. So the way it's written in the proposed budget calendar, it says if 7%. If the council agreed on 7%, you have to go to referendum.
Right,
Right,
and
right,
then if
I'm
it
not-
failed, it would be 7% anyways,
Yeah.
which would be a waste. So that's
Right.
a good point,
Right.
Tom.
Right.
That's
that-
why I need you
Right.
all to decide with John's input, the verbiage, because I am not gonna do that section.
So I think it is as simple as saying it's
I don't
great, it's greater than 7%.
Right,
Yeah.
a budget presented greater than 7%
Of,
the,
What?
Well,
of the previous year's budget.
yes,
Okay,
that's what I had too.
but remember, there's different,
Of what budget? That's now, because when you look at, there's the general fund budget that we also have social services, we also have EMS, we also have the library funds, which are separate. However, the portion of their expenses that is not covered by their revenue, so for example, EMS has its own revenue stream. They bill for the services. So we don't fund 100% of their revenues through the taxes. We fund, I don't, a percentage of that. We'll leave it at that because I don't know what the actual percentage is. That percentage that the town funds is included in the general fund budget. Okay? So, because that's part of the the one where I get the non-departmental expenditures, transfers out and contingencies, that number includes that piece of it. All right, so my recommendation, if we're gonna do something like this, is that it would be part of the general fund expenditure total. And leave it right there, because that's the part that is the part that causes the increase or the change in taxes, all right? That is the number that is funded through taxes.
Right, I think it has to be specific, so like, exactly, John, if again, we're paying, and I know it's not by mill rate, but say we're paying $1,000 a year this year, and it goes up 7% next year, which is based on, because we need to cover the gap, because the taxpayers have to pay 7% more. It's as simple as that. That's what I agree. I don't think we have to get all detailed on all different funds. I agree with you. It's just as simple, what is the taxpayer gonna pay in their bill?
so are you suggesting the verbiage, would it greater than a 7% increase in general fund
The general
expenditures?
fund expenditures, yeah. The general fund expenditure budget.
I think that makes a little more sense with the way state does.
But that covers all departments.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Board of Ed, so
It should
We
be.
That
couldn't-
covers- That includes the Board of Ed,
Mhm.
that includes, Yeah, DPW,
Right, right.
police.
I just don't want, oh, well, it didn't include EMS, so now we're gonna give them a 20%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's perfect.
I have two questions which are probably a little tangential, so forgive me for being a little new to Enfield. Do we, prior to the budget deadline, incur overtime with staff, or does our contract give more money for overtime with staff? And do you foresee any changes if we move the deadline up?
We budget for overtime, that's needed. Department heads and division managers, do not get overtime. They're the ones that would be most responsible for this.
Perfect.
If a staff who, was required to stay might, that it would have to be covered in their budget.
Foreseeable
Yeah,
overtime
yeah.
is budgeted.
Perfect.
An employee leaves and we gotta cover them. That's not, but then again, we've got part of the salary from the employee gone.
So some perspective on that. So say our budget's about 165 million. I know it fluctuates, around numbers, 165 million. 7% increase would be almost a $12 million increase in our budget. From some perspective, I would want to go to referendum. All right?
Well, where's Peter tonight?
You're talking about Phil.
Phil.
I'm like, ooh, Phil's
Like, I don't know where Peter
He
is.
told us he would be out sick.
Okay.
I mean, not sick,
Yeah.
he told us he had I think he's away on vacation or something.
Right, and that's a big number.
It really is.
And that's why.
So just for perspective on what people that
Right,
is,
and
right?
that's why Phil was at 4,
Yeah.
Tom was at 8. $12 million is a lot of
Sure
money.
is.
So, Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I was gonna say, so I'm not saying it's bad to pay people overtime, but just compared to $12 million increase, if they needed to spend
Right.
a little bit of time and we needed to spend a little bit of money to make sure they got it right, absolutely.
Right.
I just wanted to have that perspective because I'm not super familiar with the union contracts here. The other thing, just for some historical perspective for me, I know we know sort of what the governor's budget says and can anticipate a little bit and appreciate that we're conservative about it. At least when I moved here, we did have those couple of times where the legislature had to go into special session to vote in September. I just was hoping for some perspective about how we handled that or if there was anything different.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah,
Because at that point, most of the Board of Ed contracts had been already executed and it was a lot more difficult to cut anything out of that. On the town side, we had meetings with council, how many?
This is where we became best friends.
Yeah.
So what had happened, so there's a lot of interesting things there.
Yeah, just curious.
They cut the ECS cost grant. So to be specific, they didn't just say town of Enfield, you're getting $8 million less. It was a combination. John's right, we met as a group every single week and we cut basically, I think it was $5 million at that time, the town budget. The board was left alone because John's point, the contracts were in. And honestly, no one felt that we could take programs away from the kids mid-year. The town took it on the chin, and I think perspective when people talk about why there was a pass that year, well, we covered the town of Enfield covered the full cost of that reduction, plus the reduction he gave to the town. And that's why there was no budget increase to the board, because we had already basically covered their losses of $6 million, whatever it was. And then the other thing too is, John, they actually cut some of we talk a lot about the senior tax credit. What people forget about that, remember that conversation, the circuit breaker program, to be specific, they mandated the town certain provisions, but they cut their funding, which was about $300,000 to $400,000. The town absorbed all that. So there was a shift from the state to the municipality of about, I think, John, it was close to $8 million in total.
I don't think it was quite that much,
Somewhere
but
around
it was a significant, what we ended up doing was freezing all new hiring. Unless it was, absolutely necessary. Then we ended up cutting all of the capital acquisitions are almost all of the capital that we had appropriated in the budget process. And
And
Yeah,
some,
and
and some of
cut
the
back.
trips that we're talking about, why we don't do trips, well, there's a reason why we don't do trips anymore. We cut everything.
Yeah, I just say that knowing we're,
No, I hear you.
yeah, like, I mean, we're in a certain budget situation at the state. The federal government is auditing a lot of things, so I just want to acknowledge that that's something we should be prepared for.
And
Yep.
we are facing
Yes.
that very
Yeah.
thing this year
Right,
with the Board of Education, because now somebody has presented legislation that the $1.4 million that we're locked in at because of being an alliance district, they want to remove it from our ECS disbursement and give it directly to the Board of Ed. Okay, the state of Connecticut is still giving the town of Enfield the same exact dollar amount. But now the town of Enfield's going to be short $1.4 million to funding the MBR, which means that's an automatic increase to the Board of Education that the town has to give. But again, that's not going to pass or fail until after we set our budget. So as a council, we've got to take a gamble. Are they going to do it or aren't they? Do we fund them or don't we? You know,
Well,
So-
John has
so now I have a-
always been conservative on
no,
that.
this is
And I
the
know
first
that
I've
for
heard
a
of
fact.
that one, so.
no, it happened
Yeah.
yesterday.
Because I hadn't heard it yet, and this is when people were all up in arms about why we budgeted less in,
Yeah.
that was what was
That's the
supposed to
reason,
happen,
yeah.
the original Alliance District law. So now I should probably then remove that 1.4 from what we expect to receive from the ECS funding now.
yeah.
Yeah, the safe side.
I mean, we
Yeah.
also have like
So you
literally a
actually
record number of bills.
Today, about the infamous 1.4 million.
What do you mean? They were at the state of Connecticut yesterday, the Board of Education with John Santinella, and he's trying to create legislation to do this, which it's the same dollar amount. So the state's not giving us an additional 1.4 million. They're forcing us to take it out of the Enfield taxpayers.
This is what we did.
Absolutely, Bob. Yep,
I know.
yep, yep.
We had to do it.
No, this is
Yeah.
not, this isn't
Yeah,
between
no.
either side.
No,
We were
no.
all on the same page.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Laura's talking about. So if we fund them whole this year and then the state passes that legislation, we're gonna owe them an additional 1.4 million on top of it, which could change from a 6% increase to an 8% increase without knowing. Like last year, they were 3 million short, we passed the budget. Well, then there were 3 more million short, which made the dollars all messed up.
Yeah, I just, so like,
Yeah,
to the
no,
extent
I
that like,
get it.
I'm a Democrat as much as anyone else, I love spending money on people, but I also like to plan for it, right? And so, like, that's the thing that when, we have a record number of bills that have been presented this year, so things are a lot more unpredictable.
So,
Like, that's what I
Does
just
the
want to make
state
sure
get,
we're
the state
prepared.
get truly audited?
Well, yeah,
You know, I don't want to put you on the
Yes.
spot.
that's a complicated question,
I
but
know,
yes,
it's, well, I'd love to talk to you about that some other time, but.
I know,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
All right, but getting back to
Yes.
the
Yes.
task.
Still,
The general
just
fund
saying, I want to be able to have some
expenditure total
predictability.
budget. I
Well,
like that. verb.
I think for people, the budget never
Yeah.
stops, right? We work on a budget all year long, so.
One additional thing the commission has voted to, is to request 5 years of actuals in the budget.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know you prepare the budget books.
I don't think that would be that easy to do. I mean, just from, let me just, this is the budget that we have now. Let me share my screen here.
I wonder if Alex is hearing the feedback.
This was Phil's issue.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
this was Phil's issue.
No, you said it would be hard to do, John, just now?
And I mean, just from a logistics standpoint of putting the,
Just space.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
right thing, yeah. So this is what we have now. Okay, we have 2 years of actual, we have the current year budget. This is the FY '25 budget. All right, so just from a layout presentation, it would be tough to read. You'd be squeezing an awful lot of information in there. If you go to like a department page, let me roll down, like the town manager budget, you'd be putting 3 more years of actual in there. You wouldn't have the current, you'd have to remove something out of here.
So John, a suggestion, what if you took the prior 2 or whatever 3 years, just those 3 years, and put it in the appendix if we have one, so you don't have to fill it all here, and just little asterisk, 2 years prior, or whatever we decide is in the appendix. I hear you, I agree, it gets a little messy because it's so small, but maybe, what do you just create a separate and put it in the appendix?
And the other question I have on this, one more question on that, is the proposed budget is a little bit different than that.
Right,
Because obviously it's not to this point, so you usually have and if this would be, we have the same information, but we would have, instead of the proposed line, that would be the departmental request, and then the proposed is where the adopted is. All right, so do you want to put 5 years at the proposed level?
I think the rolled up level, I don't think the suggestion was this, it was the
actuals.
the actuals, John, where you just were, the slide before, you were really.
Right, we have the actuals right
2
here
years.
too. So that,
22,
No, I meant you
23
roll up,
actuals.
you roll up all the expenditures. I'm talking about that. I think that, the page you
Master
just showed.
numbers.
Not this one, the one prior.
yeah,
Not at the department.
Right, not the
Right.
department level. I'm saying at the,
Okay, yeah.
I'm saying at this level. No, sorry. Right here. So a summary of expenditures. I agree. I don't know if you could put the entire budget of L5, but if you
Yeah, we
maybe
could just-
here, you could go back and then just put an asterisk or, 2 or 3 years prior of this slide is in the appendix.
What if you made that
Just
page
actual.
landscape?
Whatever
You made it
works. yeah.
landscape instead of portrait.
Yeah.
And then really for 24, and even if you made one more page, because you got 24 budget, 24 revised, well, we don't need the 24 budget anymore because the revised is what's passed. And then same with 25, proposed and adopted. Well, what was proposed doesn't matter, what was adopted does.
Right.
So when you're trying to do a look back, doesn't matter what they asked for, it matters what we passed. If that's what Phil's getting at.
I think so, right? I don't want to, Tom, you sat right next to him.
No, I'm
Please
looking at my
correct us.
notes,
He wanted a more of a history, I think, at this level.
He said a 5-year look back
Correct, yeah.
is what he said, I think was the words he used, so.
So if we can't fit it on the page, Mike, I think what you're saying is to have this same thing, to have 20, 21 on a separate sheet and put it in an appendix. Correct.
Right, but you scroll up, John, on this
But just
page, the whole
actuals.
bottom of the page is empty.
But just actual.
that's true.
Right, so if you just turned it,
There, yeah.
if you turn it landscape,
Oh,
you'd be able to get it in, and then especially, we don't need budget or proposed. We need the revised and the actuals across.
Yep.
So the work to get to the actual budget isn't the issue. He just wants to be able to look and say, okay, the budget in 21 for general government was 3,200,000. Now it's $5 million.
Right.
so you would need three more columns.
Yes.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, no, 2 more columns.
2 more columns.
2 more columns.
Well,
And
if
I
you take
think-
something out, yes, you would, but we would.
All right, if you're gonna take out, all right, 2
Right, but
columns.
even if you turn it
If we-
landscape, you could leave it the way it
Yeah, if we
is.
printed it landscape and.
I mean, whatever, but I understand what he's doing because I have 6 budget books at home, all opened up.
Right, I wouldn't be able to do it, it wouldn't look right at the department level, like individual divisions. like police, whatever. But it would work at, if we just want the summary levels.
It's just.
I think so, I mean,
Just a
So we've
summary.
got to work on our language as well here.
Well, I just, you know, I wish Phil was here because it was his question and I want to make sure we address
Right.
his concerns.
Well, I can tell you, when I was looking at, you know, look from the outside, looking at, trying to find out the budgets and histories and stuff like that, it was very, very hard to find. Especially the Board of Ed stuff, it doesn't exist for the most part. So if there was something like this that listed the past 5 years, whether it's here or whether it's on its own page in the appendix, like he's saying, as long as it exists somewhere.
I'm 100%, I literally, on my island, I have 6 budget books.
I believe.
Trying to find the same page, more or less, like this. And there's 2 budget books, I can't even find it, period. So
There was one year that was an error on my part.
Okay, so-
Now,
now I'm not going insane, because I'm like, it's gotta be there anyways. But so, yeah, so if I had a page like this for the 5 years, because I wanted to go back to 21 or 20 and 21 is where I wanted to go back to today. So, I mean, this would be a start.
So
But
here's
then
the,
again, I'm sorry.
I'm
Amber.
sorry, I'm so sorry.
Then again, once I saw the numbers I wanted, like, why did general governance grow $4 million in 1 year? Now I would need the book, or not in 1 year, in 5 years. Now I would need those 5 budget books to determine why, which I could dig into it, but at least you'd know where the gist of the money went in which departments. So, I mean, this is definitely a start in the right direction.
I just did find just to confirm what Phil was talking about in our notes, that it was suggested to discuss the requirement to have actuals from the last 5 or 7 fiscal years rather than 1. So that,
Actuals.
actuals, so that was the ask.
Right, that's,
So
yeah.
that was just to confirm what Phil had said.
So we're in 2024, John, where it says budget and then revised. The revised would be the actual budget, right?
That would be the current budget, yes. So what was adopted, okay? And the adopted is really what we're comparing to. The changes that go from budget to revised, those are adjustments that are made. Like, those are all those transfers that we bring to you guys. The other pieces that add to that number are POs that I leave open. So if we're buying a truck at, and DPW's ordered it and it comes in, it's not gonna come in until August. Like, I wanna use, we've already budgeted for it, we've already included it in the tax base in the year 1. I don't wanna have to budget for it again in year 2 when it actually comes in, and that's when you're supposed to record the actual expense. So what happens when we do that, I leave purchase orders open, is that money gets added to the next year's budget. And it becomes part of the revised budget, but it's not part of your
Gotcha.
adopted budget.
Gotcha.
So you still need a revised column for sure.
You need a revised budget to know, and you also need you want to see what was actually adopted in that fiscal year.
John, keep me, again, is we're on a 7-1 basis, but these are based on calendar year, correct?
No, these are.
7-1 to 7-1?
Yes,
Got it, okay. So it overlaps two years.
right. The revised budget is as of when this is printed, though.
Got
I
it.
mean, we could make, and we have made adjustments after year end where we have to, appropriate stuff over 2 years, things like that,
Yeah.
where that could impact that,
Yeah.
but it's captured as of when this is printed.
Okay.
Questions? Anne Marie?
So when would the actual be on this for 24?
It will be, when we produce the proposed budget, the actual will be in there.
So when we produce
This-
25 to 26 for next year, this year's
Okay.
budget.
It would be
Okay.
around, right around.
So we're kind of like a
public
year in
hearing
arrears
Right.
kind of thing?
But you know where,
Go ahead, keep
No,
going.
you got
so does the council know where you ended for actual in '24 when you're doing your '25 to figure this out for your numbers?
We haven't finished our 24 when we've done it, when we do our 25 budget.
So,
Right, we're
This
still
was
in
last
the
year's,
budget.
Anne Marie.
so like 24 is
Yeah,
24
yeah.
to 25.
Oh, is that till the end of June?
Especially with this new language with going to referendum.
Right.
We're even 30 days less into our budget, which would leave him, 60 to 90 days
Mm-hmm.
of how much overtime is there and,
And I think, Anne Marie, so to your, I think where you're getting at, if
Yeah,
we
do you
see
see
a
where I
dip
was
in our,
going
we
with
see a
that?
dip in our fund balance, right?
Right.
So all of a sudden our fund balance goes down,
Yes,
even though 24 is not officially, I think that's when we know we have some issues, right? That would be, okay, look, and we would discuss why our fund balances and, or we're not collecting as much taxes, which I think, John, you gave a presentation about a month ago. We're tracking, okay, what's our collection rate, right? And are we seeing anything in the economy where foreclosures are up, where folks aren't paying, can't make their payments? Knock on wood, when we did this about a month ago, we were right on par, actually, I would
so
say
you know
better.
your run rate and whether or
Right,
not
right,
you're gonna be
exactly right.
up, below, or at
And we do
actual.
that through the subcommittee, and John will give periodic discussions at the council forum.
Thank you,
Yep, no, great question.
Just
Exactly
finish.
what people, you're thinking about it exactly the right way.
okay.
Yeah.
Rob?
That was my question. I'm good.
And honestly, this is what's so good. This is what people need to understand about their budgets. This is
Uh-huh.
why you'll go in and you'll never let a council, no matter who's in charge, give you a 7% increase. It should never come close to that.
Right, and that was
Yeah.
my rationale for asking the question, just to
Yeah.
understand that the council at any time has a clear understanding of where they stand at that moment when they're voting on the next fiscal year's
Yeah.
budget, so that they have to adjust for conditions, so to speak.
Look at all the budget hawks.
You know
we
what I
got
mean?
here.
So
It's
that-
good stuff.
So that they know what they need to account for that may not hit, right? And that they have to keep that in the mind. So I just want to make sure that there's a process in place that the council will always be cognizant of those things that are outstanding from, well planning.
Yep.
Okay,
Awesome.
thanks.
Maybe we should get a few
I
of these
mean,
people in
this
our
is-
budget meetings, Mike.
This is great stuff. You folks should be questioning. It's your money.
We'll get George,
Yeah.
Anne Marie, Phil. All right, so we're all clear on that?
Great discussion, folks. It really
Yes.
is. Good discussion.
What else do we have for John?
I am going to have to work with the commissioners about exactly, we've got to look at those sections and decide exactly where we're putting it. I think there's a couple things you're going to have to take out, like the automatically goes to the town manager's budget, those kinds of things. So, I'm going to need
So
your
you're in
input.
Aruba,
You're gonna need to
do a lot
write-
of work when you're in Aruba?
Yeah. And wordsmithing.
We're getting a very tight time frame. So I was hoping to have most our issues finalized so that I could complete the red line charter, complete the red line chart, for you all to look at the next meeting, so that and I want to have it out to you by Monday at the latest, so you have the whole week to look at it, so that your next meeting, you can set the public hearing, because we're getting very
Yeah.
close. Remember when I have to notice that public hearing too, so.
And your timeline you need for that is for public notice of 2 weeks?
Well, I need to, it'll take me about, it has to be 5 days, not including the date of publication, so it's really 6 days. But I have to prepare it and get it into the
Sure.
newspaper, that's another couple days. So I need like 8 days, so we're getting tight on time, considering we have to have the draft ready for the council.
Okay.
That first week of April.
Right, and next week we have the town attorney coming in.
The town attorney has not confirmed a date with me.
Okay.
I thought it was two.
Okay, so do we have anything else for John?
Unless John has something for us.
I had one question. Let's say that we had proposed 8% increase. That's both combined, Board of Ed and town. if the increase was mostly to the Board of Ed or mostly to the town, all right? If it didn't pass referendum, it would automatically have to go to 7%. Who's gonna have to make the cuts, and how are we going to,
Yeah, that is a good question.
I mean, that,
Well, it goes back to the council,
Right.
because the council
So
is the one who makes the decision where the money goes anyways. So it shouldn't, it should just be an overall budget to the
Right.
voters.
Correct.
This is what it is. They can have this as the breakdown, is a perfect
Mhm.
breakdown of how it is. This is how the money's to be spent. And they say yes or no. If they say no, it comes back to the town council, and 7% is the most we have. We sit back down at the table and say, okay, school modernization can't happen because John says we can't make the payments on the buildings. I'm using that as an example. That is not the case. So, but it would be something like that. But again, at 7%, how often do we really think this is gonna be triggered? And that's why 7 is such, I think it's too high of a number, but again, we agreed on that. So we're going forward with that. Go ahead, Anne Marie.
I'm sorry, I might be asking a silly question, but I'm looking for like the bad side, I'm sorry, but 7% is our bogey, right? So what if we, in one horrible year, realize that there are some massive expenditures and it really is gonna be a 9%. We need 9% to just break even or hit the numbers with what might be going on with Board of Ed, with special education, all of this stuff that we've been talking about in the news. And the voters say, heck no, I'm not doing 9% or 10%, then it's gonna go to 7. So there's a difference, so we're gonna have a shortage. So then, I'm not sure if that's where you're going, John, but how do we then, does that go back to the council that they're gonna have to say, well, sorry, but we're not gonna be able to go down to 7% and give the voters what they wanted, which is what I think the referendum is saying, right?
No, we have to go down to 7%.
We have to go down to 7, so then the town just has to figure out a way to spend that money to get back up to this expenses of 9%?
No, there is no,
Won't be able to.
we're not
So
going.
then, there's massive cuts that have to take place
Yes.
in lots of different places,
Well,
right?
no,
Oh.
not massive cuts. Because remember, this is an increase. This isn't a decrease to the budget. So last year's budget is funded, except for union raises. We gotta cover them. So it would be the unexpected things that come up, whether we move forward with them. Now, priorities. Now, what John's saying is, if, and I don't wanna pick on the board, so if the town of Enfield, out of that 9% increase, if the town side alone was 6% of that, and the board was only 3%, well, I wouldn't think the council would cut all 3% from the board and keep, but again, we're gonna have to sit down.
Right.
Something is going to trigger a budget over 7%, and it's gonna have to be obvious. And the town council, if I'm supporting a 9% increase, well, I better be darn sure to make the voters know exactly
Right.
why.
Right, so
And
Marie-
that's what we're saying.
So Anne Marie, like,
Yeah.
so you're right, so to what he just said, so if for some reason we need 9%, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Then the voters say, the good news, it goes to the voter.
Right.
And the voters say yes, well then there's the budget, it passes. If it fails,
Right.
then the council, like any normal budget year, we have to sit down and say, okay, what is our priorities
Mhm.
with the board, and we have to cut 2% to get to 7. So you're still getting a 7% increase, you're just not getting
Which
to
is
9.
12
Right.
million.
Well, I totally get that. It's an enormous,
Right.
number. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out that, like, the Board of Ed is our largest expenditure, I think, on our budget, correct? And so therefore, there's so many unknowns, because there's a lot that we depend upon, don't we, for other funds to come into us from the state, that is something we don't have in our control.
Well,
which-
that's what Laura's question
Right, we
was,
just-
Correct.
So,
the unknowns.
And we just went through that.
I'm sorry,
One-
she's got a lot more like stuff here that she knows that I'm like trying to catch up on, so.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Funds that come in from the state.
Yeah.
Okay, that's on the how we pay for this
Mhm.
side. That impacts our mill rate a lot.
Okay.
Because they both impact the mill rate,
Mhm.
all right? What we're talking about is what we're going to spend the money on that piece only. Now, let's say we stayed even for FY '26 at $154 million here, that what we have right here. Right now, we have several things that are going to impact the revenue side. Number one, the veterans exemption. Number two, the change in motor vehicle assessed values. Now we're talking about 1.4 million for the ECS, the change for the Alliance District.
Yeah.
Things like that. Those will all impact the mill rate, even if this thing doesn't change at all.
Right.
Okay?
Okay,
That's,
now I see.
and that's, it all works together, and it's
Sure.
very complicated to try and explain it, and it's.
You did a nice job, though. I get where you're, I'm getting the picture. I'm getting the cycle and how that all comes together, so.
So the,
Stop loss, everything is stop loss, right? Stop loss
Right,
coverage, so, or an umbrella policy, think of it that way.
Right.
So the budget is sort of our individual, that's our operating system. The referendum is like that cap, that aggregate cap from something really, again, something over $12 million increase. It gives that sort of an umbrella protection.
Yep.
And you can agree to it or you can't agree to it. So it actually is another, again, we talk about checks and balances. It's another check and balance. And to your point, Anne Marie, if the council or the board or whatever says we really need this because of X, Y, Z, then they should be able to say that in public, and it'll still be up to the voter to say, I believe you or I don't believe you,
Okay.
right?
And if the voters say no, well,
Right.
why did we have to lay off half the police department? Because you said no.
Yeah.
Because the Connecticut
Positive
changed the
effects.
law
Right.
saying that, they all have to be paid $500,000 a year, whatever the case may be, but,
Thank you.
No, great discussion.
I don't know.
So the other, just because now it's coming back to council, all right, the referendum would happen around the 20th of May, somewhere in that area. All right, we would have to meet, the council would have to meet and do more budget deliberations within the next few days, basically a week or two, in order to iron out these changes that would have to happen.
I would think that the council, and Bob might, I would think the council, knowing that we're going to referendum, would have enough to know, is this gonna pass? Or are we taking a shot in the dark and we're gonna have the backup plan if it fails? Go ahead. Bob.
So exactly to that point, Ken, I would assume, is it possible we could work that into when we're preparing the budget to, this is the proposed changes we would have at a 7%, just to give the council that glimpse well in advance so that we have an idea of where we would be at. So we wouldn't have to start from square one with those changes. That would be something we could be proactive about, correct? Because we would know what that 7% would look like.
Well, it would also be something pretty big that stands out in the budget. I mean, it's not gonna be, 5 million little things for $12 million. It's gonna be a lot. Go
Like,
ahead,
I do
Bob.
hope those, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, my point is, when it comes, if it, just looking at the whole situation,
6 months of the year,
us as a council, we would take a look at the percentages of what the increase, whatever that large ticket item might be, whether it's the Board of Ed or it's the town. Then you would I would assume that we would take percentages, maybe a little from the Board of Ed, an X amount percent from the Board of Ed, depending on what that percent increase was to make that, a 9% or a 10% increase. If it comes back to us at 7, then that's how I think that we would have to figure out to say, okay, to get to that 7%, percentages on what was asked would have to even out for both of the groups and not murder one group or the
Right,
other.
right, that's what I said
Just can't do
earlier.
it.
We-
Yeah.
If
Just
it had
can't
to
do it.
drop, we're not gonna wipe out the Board of Ed to fund the town or vice versa, but I mean, even with the amount we can spend in a year being $830,000 that we can appropriate in 1 year, we're gonna do that 12 times in one budget? That's why I'm saying it's such a large number that it's gonna be so obvious what the council is driving to do. And we should be able to alert the residents, Sheila, this is gonna cost you $500+ this month, this year, you have a say. And we need to sell it. If we believe in it, we need to sell it, you know? So, Zach.
To that point, you mentioned you had some history to show for us. Were you referring to do you know when the last time we had a budget that was at 7% expenditure increase?
We haven't since I've been here.
Okay.
How long have you been here?
This will be year 15, I think.
Wow.
Congratulations, John. Not an easy job.
We went back to 2000.
Thank you.
We went back to 2010, I can actually,
That's a good.
How close did we get?
5.5 was the,
20, yep.
Yeah, we had a 5 point, I think it was 5.4%.
22.
5.3.
5 and 22.
Huh?
In 22, Bobby's got up there 5.5.
Yeah, 5.5.
John, can you explain, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Can you go back to the page you were on a second ago?
sure.
With the budget numbers from
Yeah.
the years, yeah. All right, I have 2 questions. So right now, we're in the 24 budget year.
We're in the 25 budget year.
We're in the 25 budget year.
Yeah.
Ending.
Am I crazy?
We're gonna be creating the 26 budget.
Why don't we have 2400 up there?
Is which one, right?
That's the last.
Sorry, John, the question is why is it 24 actual?
In terms
Yeah.
of the general.
Is that because we haven't presented?
Because this is the 25 budget. This isn't the 26 budget that we're proposing. So this was actually prepared.
Current year, we're-
Right,
Last
so
March,
this current year that we're in right now, today, we're in the 25,
FY.
We are in FY 25
Yes.
right now.
okay, and we can't have the 24 actual number, why again?
Well, we can, when we do the 26 budget, we'll have the 24 budget. This was prepared
Oh,
last.
this is last year, yeah.
Right, this was all done last spring.
Sorry,
Got it.
I wasn't explaining to him right.
Got it, got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's, yeah.
No, just go ahead, Rob, make sure you're clear.
Next question, if we have a total budget for 23, the actual was 142, and the budget for 24 was 153, that's like 7.7%? I think.
I think you put it there. Is that the 5 point?
5.4.
But you're looking at actual versus,
Budgeted.
Yeah.
versus budget.
Suggested budget, like
Right,
that wasn't,
yes.
that wasn't what was actual.
Well, right,
It
the rocks
became
and fluctuation.
161.
Right, but,
So our expenditures were not what was actually adopted for the 23 budget.
So it's a 151 number you should write.
so, but so the 23 budget was higher than 142,
Yes.
got it,
When the budget was proposed.
got it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's why it gets a little confusing when you go to the actuals. And-
Yeah.
Right, you're exactly right. I think that's to your point.
Say that sentence one more time, the 23
So when
budget.
we, so right now, we start debating the budget, just use round
Yes.
numbers. So say we're at 155 million is our current, for round numbers, right? We
Yes.
start the budget, we, on May, whatever the date is, we're gonna go 160 million, so 5 million.
Mhm.
That's what we, our current is what we're going off of. Again, it's still a forecast, so
Sure.
it's still a moving number, right? It's not etched in stone.
Mhm.
So we're basing on what we know today and we're projecting forward. But then you're right, there's still revisions in any budget and John revises them. And so then when you do actual versus what proposed, it could change positively or negatively.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
And then I think that flows into our fund balance, John, right? So that drives whether we have a positive fund balance or we're in trouble.
Yep.
No, great questions. Yeah, I know I wasn't answering your question.
All set, Rob?
Yep.
Can you go back one page where you just were, John?
Might take a second to switch over. There you go.
Last second.
It took a while to get back to the other page.
Can you scroll down too, John?
So can you scroll back up? There you go. All right, so I need an explanation. Looking at this, and this is what concerns me, and Bob's already with me. So in '25, we had a 0% tax increase.
Yeah.
Why is that showing a 0.5%?
Yeah, that's.
Because the mill rate is calculated based on your total expenditures, less total revenues, less that's basically, less the total revenues. That's the difference I need to collect through my taxes, okay?
Yeah.
I have a spreadsheet that I use every year. There are several things that can impact that, okay? If our grand list grows, let's say, the Agrimark building comes on, that's a large, building, added like $50 million into our, or it's actually got I think it got an agreement with that, but let's say it adds a certain amount to our assessed values, all right? I calculate the mill rate based on the amount I need to collect, all right? The mill rate is I back into the mill rate that I need, all right? I use the same formula that you used when you calculate the tax on your house. So it's your house value times 70%, that's the state mandated percentage, divided by 1,000 times the mill rate, okay? So I back into the mill rate because I have the assessed value in total. So the amount I need to collect, you got all these items working together. If the assessed values go up, I can use a lower mill rate to collect the same amount. So if this stayed at 154 million in next year, but our assessed values, we might be able to lower the mill rate. Okay, that's what happens on a revaluation year.
And that's why that's negative 0.75.
Well, there was actually a reduction in the expenditure budget that year.
Right, but the homeowners received a huge increase
In
that year. No,
That was
25 or
No, that was
23.
23.
It was
Yeah, it was
23. They huge,
Right,
bigger
but
than
Is that what
24.
it shifted from?
Right, and that, because you and I are looking at the same thing, like, because I know what I've said, and if I owe an apology,
Yeah.
I'd be the first up there to
Please,
say.
please, you can apologize.
But what I'm getting at and what makes me nervous is what we are trying to accomplish with the 7% lock is we're really trying to stop a tax increase to the residents of 7% or more. Now, looking at this chart, thank God he scrolled by it. In fiscal year '23, it's showing a negative 0.75, but it was one of the largest increases, not by you, but because of reval and money spent, it was one of the largest costly increases to the residents this town has ever seen. So with what we just did, John, because if I'm correct, it was, call it 12 to 16% in that year. I don't know the exact number. And that's what we're trying to protect the homeowners from. So with what we have currently, with the 7% trigger, if the residents say no, is there any way that they're still gonna get hit with a 16% increase? Because looking at this, I think they could.
Yes,
Yes.
it could happen.
John, it wasn't that when
So what-
residential
Yes, it
reval,
was.
residential
So-
went through the
yeah.
roof and commercial went.
So what happened?
Commercial went down.
We're not the only variable, right? Like,
Right, it's not the only
Right,
variable,
so
there's
it's
a
based
whole.
on-
yeah.
the perfect storm
Exactly,
happened.
perfect storm.
And,
100%,
you know,
100%.
So in that year, we did the revaluation, that was October of 2021, okay? What happened for this is the commercial real estate increased. This is all partly COVID related, all this stuff was all factored in at the same time. Residential real estate values went up by 25%, say.
or more.
Or more, yeah, I mean, depends, but on average, it was,
Yeah.
residential was about 25%. Commercial real estate was about 8%. The net was about 17% of an increase in the overall grand list, okay? Because I have to calculate the mill rate based on the overall grand list change. The mill rate actually went down by 17%. All right, so for that year, we had a reduction because it was based on the overall percentages. Unfortunately, commercial only went up by 8%, so it ended up shifting, but, you know, and residential real estate went up by 25% on average. So there was the increase. The reality of that tax increase was really that it was set by market conditions in the real estate market in the town of Enfield.
Right, which was one of the big contributing factors, which, to be honest with you, I think we're heading for reval next year. I think we're gonna see it as bad, if not worse, because residential real estate has gone through the roof and commercial's tanking.
Yeah,
So-
commercial.
Right, so I'll tell you what, you guys can have the majority next year, okay, Bob?
No, I want an apology.
No, I was right, I'm still
I don't know
right.
if this is the subject of the meeting.
So,
On record.
I think where you and I were going with this, Mike, was to prevent the taxpayer
Correct,
from
Yes.
getting that increase.
Right.
This does not
Right.
do that,
correct.
which is, I mean, see, this is
I
eye-opening.
mean,
Right.
you can't control what what's gonna happen with reval. There, you don't know which way it's gonna go. And whoever thought that commercial would tank,
Right.
you know?
Right, and that was part of it, so
So since that 21, you know, we've been adding
Yeah.
additional commercial properties, and that's kind of pulled the, you know,
That's how.
it has helped, because
Yeah.
you don't have, I don't have to increase the mill rate by as much, because these additional values come on as assessed value. That's where, you know, things like, the development of the mall, or the Levitt's property, whatever potential properties could, you know, any increases or big things that come on, are helpful to this. You know, even if we've never, I've never,
Epidorf and Agrimark, you know.
yeah, they all did,
That
and,
helped.
yes.
Well, right, like I have got 3 levels of government doing everything. I also have my town council that might vote for tax abatements or not tax abatements. I also have like the economy that's changing, all my housing prices and everything. Like, I think everyone's totally right that like, yes, like we can't guarantee that what we're doing here will help, but like we have to know that it might. Even though I don't like the referendum, but still, like, we have to know that it might. And like, I feel like what we're doing here is a good faith effort to do the best we can.
absolutely.
Like,
And
so that's,
I think to Mike's point,
yeah.
it doesn't hurt to have
Kind of like umbrella,
oversight, right, a
umbrella
trigger.
policy.
But this really
Right.
backs up my point that 7% is way too high, because it's never done it.
Yep.
You know, I mean, look at the year, a 0.75% decrease cost the average homeowner in Enfield 16% more in taxes.
So there were, the other
That's
things that
crazy.
happened at that time was, that was the first year of the Alliance District.
Mm-hmm.
So we took $1.4 million out of
Yeah,
other
that was
revenue.
that whole debacle.
So,
It was a perfect
Again,
storm.
it goes to, this shows you how unfair the property tax is.
But see, and that is,
Exactly.
right, that is the problem.
Because it just shifted to the, exactly,
Why?
right.
Why do we gotta play these games?
Why do
And
we have to
you
reval,
know,
reval is silly. I agree with you. I
It's
think
insane,
rebalance them.
because it's so hard for people to really see what's going on. I mean, even doing your taxes every year for the federal government. Why do we gotta pay an accountant? Flat fee us and be done with it. Not that I want that, but. But it's just so complicated, and here we are, and, because as soon as that screen came up, I was like,
I know.
oh boy, am I in trouble? But I'm not, but there's a lot to the story that needs to be explained.
Right.
Jack?
Thank you. I have a question for John. So to the point that what we've discussed here, there is no potential alternatives that might be implemented in other communities that you think would better address the concerns we have here, right? Like, there's no way we could tie a potential cap to, for instance, the average assessment increase or an average increase that it would have on the average assessed homeowner in Enfield, right? Is that something that's undoable?
Are you saying more like we put a cap on the residential increase
Yeah,
to
so
taxes?
like, for instance,
The state does, in Massachusetts, they are allowed to have separate mill rates for commercial and residential. The only different mill rate we're allowed to charge is on motor vehicles.
so my question was not on whether we bifurcate that, though I do think the state should change their statutes and allow us to do that. It was, could we put a cap in terms of, let's say, the proposed budget from the council, and we were able to run the numbers, would have an average increase for homeowners of 7%, that we would send it to referendum on that, not to change the mill rate or create a separate mill rate.
I mean, this year might be an example of if we truly have to budget for a reduction by $1.4 million, that's going to impact the other things are going to be, you're talking about only the homeowner, the residential real estate piece of it. You're not talking about the motor vehicle or business personal property components. This year, we've got a shift due to the reduction due to, it's gonna be about $9 million due to the veterans tax abatement that was granted by the state. Then the motor vehicle reduction, okay, the change in the calculation of assessed values is going to be, like right now, as of now, the way it sits, is going to be a $56 million reduction in the assessed value of motor vehicles. In order for us to, that's going to automatically cause an increase in the real estate mill rate. So this is an example of, sometimes it's out of our hands.
So
You look at here, so yeah, you would have to go and then they say, no, I'm not gonna do it. And then we're back to, all right, yeah, who are we laying off? Because on the town, we can cut all of our capital budget. But then you might not get enough.
So you're anticipating a $9 million cut in the grand list for the veterans?
Yes.
Right,
So
a reduction in the grand list, not a tax loss.
Correct. Reduction in the assessed value. That would be, I think we said it was about a total, it was like about $2 to $3 million reduction between the two components of that. Now, we'll talk about it more next week, but the governor just signed two bills. One that changed the definition of the veteran reduction back to what it was originally supposed to be, so that it was going to be 11 million. Now it's only going to be a $9 million, only going to be a $9 million reduction in the assessed value. It's still only on the dwellings, and it's, it's expanded any other way.
Right, but it's also, you have to be 100% service,
Really.
military
Yeah.
service related. So if you got hurt at work,
We are
You're not
at,
covered.
correct, and we have about somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 veterans that are in that category.
and they deserve it.
And then one of the other things is the governor proposed an alternative depreciation schedule for motor vehicles, which would essentially add 5% to each category. I mean, you tax them. The motor vehicles would tax about, it would be 90% of the value for the first year instead of 85%. That's a local option that can be adopted. But it would also relieve some of that $56 million reduction that's gonna shift over to the homeowners. So,
See, I mean, they changed the blue book value on cars, and now they're telling us, well, we can overcharge the residents, if you agree to do this option, so they can take the taxes off the residential, and renters are saying, no, tax the homeowners. Homeowners are like, well, I own a car too, so
Out of
it
one
doesn't
pocket and the
benefit
other.
me.
Exactly, right,
It
so
doesn't-
like,
well, yeah, the only thing about that is if you reduce the amount there, and I don't know what percentage of residents only pay through motor vehicle. Okay, so they're renters that they're not paying through the residential real estate piece. I don't know what percentage of those cars are, but when they're paying a lesser share now, they will end up paying additional rent because, it's gonna turn around and landlords are gonna increase the rent for them to cover it.
Right,
So-
you're
Yeah.
paying one way or another.
Right.
exactly, right, like it's.
All right,
My problem.
any other questions for him?
Great
That's why I have
explanation.
white hair.
Yeah, this is.
We really appreciate you so much.
Do you have anything
So
for us,
exciting.
anything else for us, John?
I think I got,
Your answers that you needed?
I think so, as long as, like I said, as long as we have a definitive definition of what we're going to apply the 7% to, and, the calendar, and know what we're gonna do as far as if it happens. I think the other piece on this is, there is a state cap, budgetary increase cap, which is 2.5% for the inflation rate, whichever's higher. So the state cap, it's got a penalty to it. That's not a major penalty, but that could change too, and it could become a major penalty if it's happening a lot. People in towns are ignoring it. But we haven't been over that much as yet.
Can you scroll down? How far back does that go?
It goes to 2005.
Oh, 12. All right.
There's been conversation about whether that 7% is the right number or not. I felt like I was one of the stronger voices that was pushing for 7%. But I don't know if we're still considering talking about changing that number, because if we're not, I'll just shut up.
What it was to get a consensus to move forward.
Yeah.
Bill was at 4, you were at 8,
Right.
and we settled at 7.
Right.
And I think I was more in the 5 range.
Yeah.
And it was just everybody, we came to an agreement on that. But again, I think you're even seeing how large that number is. And the voters are watching saying, how much? In one tax increase, it would be devastating.
Well,
But I could, again, the question I'm trying to ask without getting into the conversation is, I thought we reached the decision, a consensus, and we're moving forward. And if we are, let's just leave it there. And I don't need to say a word.
I mean, unless there's support in the room to drop that number down.
I think you've already said a word.
which, that's what we're here for.
What's up? I think you've already said a word, so I think we can.
So could we,
You know what I'm saying? I'm saying I could defend more,
Right,
but I don't think there's a need to.
Right, I'm saying you've already said something, and I think we should have that conversation.
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I do also, like, I just also want to go back to what I said initially, like, I think we should consider, no matter what number we have, adding the budget to the power of initiative. Like, I think that even if it's a tiny percent increase, if there's something that I'm a resident that is in the budget that's being paid for that I disagree with, I should have the ability to collect signatures and bring that to a referendum. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
So to this point, and I think even if you have a lower number, I think one of the challenges you'll go into is the inverse of the assessments. Let's say that things go really well for certain businesses and our grand list increases, in which our expenditures could increase without a tax increase necessarily being carried over to the residents if our grand list goes up significantly. So I don't know if lowering it would achieve that, but I'd be open to it. But I do think this goes to what way could we holistically best provide residents the opportunity to stop a tax increase? And I think to that point, it would go to the power of initiative, because at that moment, residents would know with the budget, what is the impact going to be on the mill rate? They would see the impact to the mill rate rather than it being an automatic, because they could see that expenditures could barely increase, but the impact to the mill rate is significant, and they would have the power to do something about that. Or they could see expenditures could go down, but the impact to the mill rate would be significant, and they could vote it down as the mill rate is approved.
Right, but you're pushing it to the voters again. You're
Yes.
putting it on the voters who are aware enough of what's coming and what's going on. And if the council, wanted to be sneaky and, because one thing I'm gonna propose is all budget meetings are televised. But to see, because this is reality, and people need to understand stuff like this to be informed. So, again, now if Tom is willing, I'm willing, to me, I always thought 5 was a fair number. Now, John, can you tell us when's the last time we went over 5?
22.
Yeah, here's the concept, is that when
24.
when we had this conversation,
22.
when we had this conversation the first time, I wasn't thinking about had we ever done it, I was thinking about would we ever do it?
Sure.
And in my mind, Enfield's been blessed with never having any act of nature or act of God do something devastating to this town. And my fear is that at some point, if that were to ever happen, please God, no. And if we were to rely upon state or federal aid, that's a mistake. And so the town council may have to say in that given year, we need money to do things that the state or federal government is not going to pay for. And so the town may suggest a budget that approaches or exceeds 7%. And I think at that point, that is the only time I become in favor of a referendum. And that was the reason why I picked such a high number, because I'm thinking about a disaster.
Right.
I'm not thinking about normal day-to-day operation of the council, as this proves. Because if you recall, one of the things I was also championing was, I trust the council up to a certain point. And that's why I did want to pick a high number, and I remain on that position.
Right, so we're there.
Yes.
We already agreed, we're not going, he's at 7, we agreed to 7, we're moving forward.
Got an
That's it.
emergency declaration.
The only reason we're discussing it is because he brought it up,
Okay.
so.
And I,
Well, I was commenting because there were comments about the 7 was too high. So I wanted there to be a voice that said, no, it's not.
Right, but then there's comments too that they want it's consensus to move forward.
We could
Yes.
go back and rehash everything that we
Right.
already
Let's not.
decided upon.
All right, what else we got for Mr. Wilcox? John? Sheila? Anybody? Any questions? Did you find us any extra money this week, John?
You did, but you took it away.
Thank you.
John, I
Thank you,
thank you
John.
very much for coming.
Very informative.
Yeah,
Thank you, John.
absolutely.
Very informative.
And then, I mean, I think this would be huge, you know, having all the budget meetings televised too. So,
Yeah,
Well, exactly, yes.
I totally agree
Yeah.
with that.
I think John should do a tutorial each week on ETV.
No, I
In all your spare time, John.
I think your
In spare time,
explanations
that's right.
tonight was
She's like the busiest man.
Yeah.
spot on
Oh, yeah.
and informative for everybody that heard it
Yes.
tonight, because you told everybody exactly how things are
Mhm.
done.
And you did it in such a way that was
Thank you.
easy to understand, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
thank
I
you.
tried, it's not straightforward, like I
No.
said, there's a
No.
lot of different moving parts on it. So,
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thank you, John. Have a
You're
nice
welcome.
rest of your
Yes.
evening.
Thank you.
okay.
That was-
It was eye-opening, wasn't it?
I don't think there's anything else. Because we have to table again.
So we're at,
Number 4,
town attorney,
Yeah.
the town attorney.
Town attorney.
town attorney correspondence regarding the zoning is the next.
All right, the town attorney correspondence regarding the zoning.
Yep.
That's the email that's
Yes.
second in your packet.
Which says the town council cannot be involved in zoning.
Well.
Short answer.
Yep, right here.
Okay, so are there any questions about that?
Well, what about his second sentence? Hang on, I'll find it. So I was a little confused with the opinion.
What, at the very end?
At the,
On the
yeah,
second sheet?
yeah, well, on his second paragraph, if I can find it.
See underneath here, I think, is that what you're talking
No,
about?
not that, no.
The reference to West Hartford?
Well, when he says that the towns can have it or something, I can't find it.
Oh, yeah, by the way, West Hartford Charter lists town council as the zoning authority, however, its code of ordinances establishes a 5-member town plan and zoning commission.
And if that circumvents.
West Hartford, so there's 3 circumstances in which a town can be a zoning, this is the way I understand it, its own zoning authority. If it's a town of less than 5,000
Yeah.
people, if prior to 1974,
Right.
that town had passed an ordinance or a charter provision that made them the zoning authority for the town, or if prior to 1987, by special act of the legislature, they gave a particular town additional authority. And we don't fit in any, either of those categories. We're not a special act town. I grabbed a list of them. There's quite a few, but I only, I did put an email blast out to my association, to every town clerk to say, okay, everyone, who has your council or your board of selectmen as your zoning authority? And I think I got 4 responses, and they were all special act towns.
Thank you for doing that.
Any more questions?
No, it's pretty clear.
It's straight, as soon as I saw it, yep.
Yeah.
And that's why, we thought, you know, we really didn't need Lori Witten to come in because we can't do it anyway, so.
Although also wonderful ideas, Zach, like,
Well, I guess that's-
well intended and good.
It's one more instance of the state interfering
No,
in town's
it
business
was a
when they
great
shouldn't be doing
idea.
it.
I think we all agreed, especially when it gets into regulation changes, I think it should be a bigger issue. Of course. So, but again, like Tom says, it's having trust in the boards and commissions that
Yes,
you
I don't
put
like the
there.
state government.
So, all right, unfinished business. Chapter 2, Section 2, serving one elected, this is all for the town attorney,
Yeah.
who is not here tonight.
But we
Go ahead. No?
We do have his opinion, and I think that we can make decisions on all of these.
Okay.
So the opinion is the kind of long
Have you read them?
3-page, I have, and I kind of boiled it down.
That's what we need.
So chapter 2, section 2 is municipal elections. Our suggestion, if you remember, was all elective officers shall hold only one elected position at the same time. And a month or so ago, the town attorney's office gave us their opinion that the legislature does not prohibit, like a member of the General Assembly of being a counselor. But we kind of said, well, let's flip that. Can the town say one of their, and the answer is basically, there's no statute giving the municipalities authority to prohibit someone from running for office at state level. And it's also not in one of the incompatible offices where they say you cannot have these two jobs, which there's several in the state. It's also not that. So his suggestion is that the decision for the commission anyway is, would you like to add section D to, subsection D, to saying no member of the town shall hold any other elective office under the government of the town of Enfield during the council's term. So honestly, for us, especially if the charter passes, we're not going to have constables any longer. It is really just the Board of Ed. We couldn't, and I think that there may be a Board of Ed statute that would prohibit that anyway. But
You mean a council member serving as a Board of Ed member?
yeah, and I believe
Because
that's
those are
already
the only two
non-compatible.
elected.
I don't know, but right, some towns elect a lot more offices, some towns elect their zoning, some towns elect their planning board, some towns elect their BAA. So, we don't.
Okay.
So I guess it's whether you want to add that or just leave it or remove it.
Because you're saying the statute is silent?
I would say,
It does not give us, there is no statute giving the towns authority, and we only have the authority that the state grants us.
Right, I was gonna
I
say,
mean, I don't
like,
think we
sometimes
allow other
Yeah.
members to be, like, us to be on planning and zoning. us
We
to
can.
be on-
Oh,
Yeah.
that can, absolutely, that can happen.
it may be
That's
in poor
one,
taste,
that's
but it
not an
can.
elected position, that's an
Oh,
appointed position.
Okay, elected.
So that's what we're saying, is the only other elected would be Board of
Yeah,
Ed.
Board of Ed, that's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm okay with adding it. I mean,
Yeah, because for the
I
future.
mean, we're saying it can't, but we now currently have a situation where someone's holding two offices, which I think is wrong. But if we can't do anything about it at the state level, who says someone won't do it? I mean, we keep saying
You
it
mean
won't
run
happen.
for council and Board of Ed?
Or, I don't know, or can get appointed, you don't have to
Isn't
run,
there
right?
state statutes
That's what she
You
said.
could get appointed,
I'm
right?
not 100%
Well, yeah.
on that. I
You
know.
don't have to run, but if,
Separate Board of Ed.
The Board
I
of
don't know,
Ed-
maybe it's silly, but I don't know.
So you're saying if a member quit or whatever happened, the council could appoint one of the council members to
Technically,
take
we could.
that also?
We could, based
But
on.
that's not,
That's
if
not true. It's not elected, so you're appointed.
it's an elected position though.
Right.
Board of Ed is an elected
Yeah.
position, so. It's whether the office is elected, not
Right,
whether you're
right.
appointed to fill a vacancy or.
I think it's such a minuscule,
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah,
The likelihood of
I say no.
little.
consensus?
I'll be the one to say it, because I don't like the current situation, I guess.
Well, and Mike, I agree with you, but your issue,
I hear you,
it would only give you this much, where your issue's a lot bigger than that.
but I'll be
So-
the one to center though.
Right, I'd be the one to say, just because there's not legislation,
I agree, I
it
don't
doesn't mean
disagree.
it's legal or illegal, and the town should be able to
There's
set
no
its
precedence
own.
Again,
We don't need to make more.
sorry, we're selling
Right.
recreational marijuana when it's against the federal law, so I mean, but we won't go there, right?
It's not.
All right, moving
Okay,
on,
so-
chapter 3, section 4, vacancies, town attorney review, table 227-2025.
Oh, the vacancies, is that what we're
We
doing?
missed one.
Can we do removal?
eligibility,
Removal
I think
from
we
office?
skipped one.
Removal from office.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus,
removal from
I'm sorry.
office, that's
Yeah. Chapter 2, section 3, removal from office, town attorney review, table 227-2025.
So our suggestion was any town council member who violates the charter is found guilty of an ethics violation by the Ethics Commission, violates the rules of executive session, or directs town employees without town manager approval will be removed from office by a unanimous vote of the council members seated and present, excluding the subject member or members. So the town attorney's review of that, first of all, under found guilty of an ethics violation, we cannot, the Ethics Commission does not find people guilty. They cannot. Guilt is for crimes. So we could not use that term. And in the ethics ordinance, it already says that all commission members as well as employees must follow the ethics ordinance. In addition to that, as far as the rules of executive session, 2-129D of the ethics ordinance prohibits the disclosure of confidential information given out during executive session. So that is already covered by the ethics ordinance as well. So the suggestion from the town attorney's office is that we add to the charter, any town council member who violates the provisions of this charter or who the Ethics Commission is found to be in violation of the ethics ordinance shall be removed from office by unanimous vote of the town council members seated and present, excluding the subject member or members. So take into consideration, if you do decide to pass that, right before in that same chapter, you can grab your charter if you want, but in section 9, it already says any counselor violating the provisions of this section upon a finding thereof by a court of competent jurisdiction shall cease to be a counselor. So that line would also have to be a change to be consistent, you know, that it would have to be by the vote of the unanimous vote of the seated counselors. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you guys think?
Can I ask a question about, sorry, what it says right now, when it says if they're found in violation of anything, they should be removed? Does it say by a vote, or does it just say they should be removed and there's not a mechanism for that?
No, by
Sorry.
a court of competent jurisdiction. So you basically we're taking them to court.
Got it. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm good with six.
I prefer-
I'm good with the way
yeah.
6B is written.
The way 6B,
You know,
the proposed.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it feels a lot more
What's
straightforward
proposed?
and less complex than what's there now, so.
Not sure
Grew
what
up
that
in
And we did determine the council would have the authority to remove someone from office.
Yes.
Unanimously, which I think is a good compromise.
In reading this, it's helped my vocabulary, and I think, you know.
So the eligibility is where we discuss this, which is on page 3.
Right.
But we would need to move this under chapter 3, the town council, because it's specific to the town council.
Right.
And that's where we would put section 9. So I lied. Section, hold on,
12,
12?
right?
12.
12,
Thank
yes.
you. I'm reading my notes in.
So section 9, 12?
No, it would be under chapter 3, which is the town council.
Yeah,
And it would be
Section
we would
12.
add a section
Right.
12 after the audit
That was
report.
gonna be my question. We couldn't go to section 6.
And, they suggested the title of it would be removal from office.
Yes.
So one question
Oh, I get it.
about the unanimous vote, wasn't there a conversation that we had that that would exclude the person in question? So-
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It says that, Anne Marie.
Okay, sorry.
Subject member.
It says excluding the subject member. or-
Very important clarification.
Sorry.
It said person or persons, so
Yeah.
hypothetically, there could be 5 people
If they were all
It's
involved.
that were all involved that are,
Yeah,
In
And
cahoots on
that's the
something,
remaining, it would have
now
to be
it's,
unanimous vote
it's
of
the
the
remaining
remaining.
4 people, which could
or not.
potentially be,
Of child.
the majority
Oh, yeah.
are all found to be unethical, and the 4 minority people would be the only ones that would be voting on
Say that again, Rob, I'm sorry.
I get it.
it. So,
Don't.
I get it.
so
I want it.
the majority has more members. So if all of the majority are found to be unethical, then the only people that would be voting would be the minority.
Well, so yes, but also wouldn't the ethics commission need to find them in violation, and isn't the ethics
Right.
commission subject to minority representation?
The ethics commission is subject to a super minority representation because they can't, I believe it's two,
Not, it just,
they can't have more than, yeah.
yeah. So there would be someone from the other party weighing in, no matter how you cut it.
They are
right?
restricted more than general minority representation laws. They have a higher degree of restriction.
I'm just wondering if there should be like a minimum number that would have to be voting.
In our policy procedures, it's 6.
We have
Yeah.
6, and that will be,
I agree, I think, if I can
Going
mind.
to an extreme, but yeah.
I think he's trying to make a point, which I think I sort of have to agree with him.
Yeah.
So regardless of ethics, they did something wrong. Let's take ethics out of it. Maybe they're, whatever it may be. And there's a 6-5 majority either way, and 5 of them are one party and they're determined to be in violation of some sort. I think, Rob, if I'm saying it correct, then technically, right? I mean, let's not play politics here. It probably never makes it to the council floor to even get to a vote,
Probably.
right?
I think at that point, if you have that many people
Right.
involved, that
We
it's
got
gonna
other
be in
problems.
court.
Up
Yeah.
there.
And, you know,
That's-
had a majority.
But I think it's fair that it gets squirrely in the charter, right?
Violated.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, I
It would
just,
only be the minority party voting, that it could be a political.
if we're really preparing for the future, I would rather have fewer parameters than more, like, because I don't necessarily know how to prepare. We don't know what we're coming up against, right, in the future, right? And honestly, if I have a whole party screwing up and we don't end up taking them to court, like, we've got other people we
Right,
probably
no,
want to can
sure.
in town government. And like, I don't, based on what we know today, want to add more semantics to, I appreciate flexibility even when it comes to stuff like this, honestly, because I just don't know. But that's just
I
me.
think having the minimum 6, I think would be,
Well, right
I don't
now,
know,
our rules and
I just-
procedures say minimum of 6. When we get to the next section for vacancies, there's an exception to that because of what you all discussed, but we can talk about that for a minute. But there's no exception written in by the town attorney for this vote, so there would be a minimum of 6 votes needed. That's what every council,
right?
right,
Yeah.
every resolution by the
So
council has a
there.
minimum of 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would mean.
I think the only way to
5
cover,
people found in
not to make this
violation.
crazy, the only reason to cover Rob's scenario is to actually have a recall vote, which I don't know if folks want to get into that, but that's really the only way to
So-
handle this situation.
I actually, love the idea of recall,
I agree,
but it is
100%
against the
agree.
municipal code,
Right.
so like we can't, I wish we could.
No, I
I
don't
checked.
disagree, yeah.
Like, several.
Yeah, it's actually, because I think, I mean, everyone says none of this ever gonna happen, but things are happening that never were
Yeah.
going to happen, right? So I agree, it's a tough one, right? Because it happens, Rob's right. What do you do, right? Probably, I know everyone says wait till the next election. That's another reason why you keep it 2 years, because stuff like this can happen,
Right.
right?
Well, I think the language,
If we want a little direction right
it
now.
must be by a majority vote other than the person,
it said unanimous.
Unanimous.
right, unanimous vote,
Unanimous vote.
other than the person or persons
Right.
would solve it.
Right.
I mean, unless you want to.
What if it was 6 people of the majority party?
That would,
It's a majority vote of
The
the
remaining
council of, except the accused person or persons. So if there were 5 Republicans that blatantly went out and
Democrats.
told everybody about whatever and violated the charter, then it could be the 6 take out the 5, but you're opening a
Yeah.
huge can of worms and everybody knows it. And the lawsuit says you have to make sure you have a pretty good case. Now, I've only seen it happen once and none of us, both parties were together on this. and none of us had a leg to stand on. We couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though it was, the minority party, was it minority? Majority party, it limited them, because now they're stuck. And they can't do anything because they lost the majority, because if it's a 6-5, now it's a 5-5. And when you've got both parties agreeing in today's world, there's a serious problem with what's going on with the person.
Right.
So, so person or persons, I think would solve without keeping it simple, like you said, Laura.
I think that to Rob's point, I think he's concerned about the accusation becoming a political issue. Am I right in that? So I believe, without jumping the gun, if the commission votes to approve the next section for vacancies, that will solve that question.
I agree.
Sure.
Agree.
It's like a really good point. I appreciate it very much. I just,
I agree with that.
You know,
In the event of such occurrence,
Right.
the seat of the party that was vacated shall be filled by that party. That eliminates that. So sake of argument, if what you're saying is right and 5 Republicans get taken out, there's none left.
Right.
The town committee
Yeah.
would put up 5 people, and the council has no choice. They have to go with it,
I'm good with that.
And that's it.
right?
yeah,
I agree.
I think that's reasonable.
I can go with that.
I mean, I personally think that's how it should be on all of it, but
Me too. I agree with you on that.
I mean, it's like a good faith showing, right? And again, that's what the charter's supposed to be. So,
did you follow that?
Yep, she did.
I think we're good.
so do we have a consensus?
oh, I believe so.
Yeah. So we have a consensus on this?
Do we have a consensus the way it's written?
Yes.
For both sections or for?
Person or
It would have to
person.
be changed.
For both sections, we're talking
It
about.
says, that's what it does, it says the subject member, and then it has in parentheses members, you know, that S.
Okay.
So do you want me to read it one more time to make sure we're all?
It's all right here. It's right
You
here.
got it in front of you, all right.
You don't have to-
It's right here.
Yep.
And then the next one is chapter.
Vacancies.
Thank you. So we didn't have a suggestion. My original email to the town attorney's office stated what we were looking to achieve by it, because we didn't have the verbiage, and this
Yeah.
is their suggestion for verbiage. And it says, all right, notwithstanding any provisions of this charter, including but not necessarily limited to the 6 affirmative vote requirement. So that is making the exception for this particular section, that it does not have to be 6 votes, it could be 5 votes.
Right.
Sure. All right, all right, vote requirements set forth in chapter 3, section 4 herein. Any vacancy in any elective town office, including the Board of Education, from whatever cause arising, shall be filled by an appointment by the party of the member who had held such office within 60 days of the date of the vacancy for the unexpired portion of the term, or until the next biannual municipal election, whichever shall be sooner. However, in the event that such member who held such office was either an unaffiliated voter or the only member of a minor party, the vacancy will be filled by a vote of the remaining members of the applicable elective body. So what they're saying is that if it's a Republican or a Democrat who resigns, the Republicans on the board or the Democrats, even if it's, only 4, get to replace their own Democratic member. However, if it's unaffiliated or maybe a member of the Green Party got on the board, that if they're the only member, then the entire board votes to
For any party.
For any, yep. Then it's a vote of the council for any
And
party.
then the majority wins.
I think that's fair.
Sheila,
Yeah.
I like that.
I must have read this 10 times now, and I think I just heard you say the same thing. The first 2 lines, are you saying that says you don't have to have 6 votes?
Yes.
And I
Notwithstanding
just
the-
don't get that.
The
I just
provisions
don't get it.
including but not, it says notwithstanding the, so it's saying, we understand the charter says you need 6 minimum votes, but for this particular thing, for what the commission was trying to accomplish by having the party vote, be the only one voting for their replacement, is that they're saying it's basically, the way I take it is legalese to make the exception.
Okay,
Is this for the board or for the council?
Council.
Council.
It's a
And
council
I
and the Board
agree
of
with
Ed. The
I
Board of
agree.
Ed has their
That's
own.
what I wanted to
The
say.
Board of Ed as well. It
The Board of Ed
says,
doesn't
including
do
the
their
Board of
own.
That's
Education.
what I thought, including, right.
There is a separate statute already that the Board of Ed replaces their own vacancies. In other towns that I've worked at, that's how it happened. The council doesn't even vote, the board does. But our charter superseded that. So our charter said the town council
And it's
replaces all
gonna stay
vacancies.
that way.
Right, 'cause I think the issue with the board, right, I mean,
So
right,
that might not be clear.
I don't think it is, right.
Because that might not be
No, no.
clear as to whether the board has the power or the council does. That might, is that what you were talking about?
No, he's
No,
talking
he's
about
talking about
not having
assuming
6 votes. And the
Yeah,
reason,
he's talking.
the reason, Tom, is because an appointment of a vacant council member has become very, very political over the years. And the seats end up sitting empty. So, you know,
Then we gotta break off.
I understand, because I was involved back in 2005 or 6 over a situation where a person lost the election, then the other party decided somebody stepped down and they wanted to put that person in. Now, my concern is you, the elector, so Bob Crisati's winnable. Bob's done though, he wants to retire. So Bob agrees to run, you're not electable, he steps down a month later and puts you in the seat,
Yeah, I get it.
you circumvent the voters.
I get it. No, I mean, I want it to say you don't need to have 6 votes. I want it to say you don't have to have 6 votes.
No.
I'm just saying, I don't think it says that, but if you're saying the legalese is that's what it says, I'll trust the attorney, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
Yeah, because
man,
it
that
says
is
not
what it says to me.
necessarily limited to.
Yeah, which Joe won't read it that way.
I think there's pluses and deltas no matter how you cut it too, like,
Yeah. 6 or 7.
I could,
Okay,
you know, I can send him an email confirming that so that you have it in writing.
well, that would be great. Thank you.
And we could, shall be filled by a town council appointment by the party of the member of the office. If you want to add that, we can run it by the town
Yeah.
Yeah.
attorney. Do you know what I mean, adding, because it's still saying the Republicans' town council fills a Republican Board of
Seat,
Ed
yeah.
vacancy. That's how you want it? Is that what you guys were
The
discussing?
town council will replace Board of Ed
Okay,
vacancies.
and I think that the way that I asked him the question, because I think at the time it came up, it said, we want this for the the Board of Ed as well. I think I probably phrased it, I misinterpreted that, saying you wanted the Board of Ed to be able to fill their own as, in the same manner that the council does.
Correct.
So I think I gave the town
Right.
attorney
Right.
incorrect, which
They,
is why it's
whatever
good that you guys
party,
watch me.
right, whatever party should be able to replace their Board of Ed member
Exactly.
from the council.
Council,
Yeah.
council appointed. So I believe adding just town council before that appointment by the party of the member shall be filled by a town council appointment by the party of the
Mhm.
member who had held, I believe will suffice, but we can run that by the
Mhm.
council.
Any more questions?
I mean, by the town attorney,
You got that, Sheila?
yes.
Okay. Next is new business, discussion and possible action regarding proposed charter revisions. Nice.
But,
I mean,
I thought we were done actually.
no, we have to still, well, we needed to be able to vote on these things, so it had to be on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yes.
But it's a special meeting tonight, so we're limited. But we need to talk about the verbiage for everything that we talked about with John. So it's easy to change all of those dates, you know, instead of 60 days before, but how and where are we gonna put in, the referendum requirement, the 7%, you know what I mean? We have to come up with that verbiage. Or at least a suggestion for their town attorney to
Review.
pick apart and, yeah.
How do we do that? It's 11 or?
Yeah.
Do we want to get into that with
that
it
something-
being 25 past 8?
That's your decision. We have to have this draft ready for the town council by from tomorrow.
So, I mean,
Coming up fast.
I would be comfortable if
And I'm leaving on the 26th.
if it is possible, because we've decided on the language and what we want to achieve for the town attorney to make their own discernment about where it would be most appropriate to go within the charter. And when you or your designee bring us this red line version, we can see where it is and determine
Where it
whether we
is
feel
and-
comfortable with it. And if we needed to.
So there are probably decisions you're gonna have to make, though. I mean, I think you should look at the council duties on the budget,
What page?
16.
That's right, okay.
Duties of the council on the budget. I
So
would
we-
think that's where it would start.
Mhm. So we've got
Which
on
is-
there, do we actually ever
Oh, right here, she-
have a vote, Ken, on the 145 days, 110, 100?
Now,
You know what I mean? We
would,
didn't.
my question is,
I don't
the
think so.
dates, would that go under the duties of the manager on the budget?
So it would be, we would be talking about voting on Chapter 6, Section 2, departmental estimates would change 120 to 145.
Right,
Section 3, on the very
Oh,
top,
yeah,
for
yes.
duties of the manager on the budget, not later than 110 days from 75.
yep.
Yeah.
There it is. Just want to make sure I'm in agreement. And then duties of the council, the 60 at the very top would be changed to 100.
Yeah.
Within 20 days of the final public hearing would remain the same.
Right.
It's the second page when you turn it over that I think we need to figure out a little bit. So it says, the final, within 20 days after holding the final such public hearing or hearings, the council shall adopt by resolution a budget and file the same with the town clerk. We could add the words, if no referendum is pending.
Yes.
And then we would need to describe the cap, the 7%.
I would think that we would just drop down to another, make it,
Making a subsection,
making it 4A. In the event the budget exceeds 7%, it shall go out to referendum.
Well, didn't John say something
Yep,
about
I've got
it
it.
should be
Yep.
total?
Yep, in the event that the budget exceeds 7%,
General fund or something?
the budget
Yeah.
General fund
increases greater than 7% in the general fund expenditure.
That's what he said, yes. I wrote it down, please.
General
So that would be for
A, yeah, instead of trying to weave it into what's already written there.
Yeah.
And then when Sheila's proofreading all this, if there's a line or two or a word that's gotta get changed,
Right,
you can address that. I think
Okay.
that would be the cleanest.
all right. And then we will,
Total, but, yeah.
so how do you all feel about kind of codifying the third Tuesday of May as referendum day?
Yes,
Yes.
You all right with that?
for Memorial Day, a perfect day.
And these dates, you being the town clerk, I really, you've gotta be confident with the dates.
Yeah, I
Sheila.
mean, it's close, it mostly like you were talking about, if it's a 9% budget and it comes back to the council because the referendum was voted down. You all you only have 7 days from the referendum date to decide, so you would have to meet. I work for towns where the Board of Finance meets right after the referendum, that night,
I-
8
you
o'clock,
know
the
what?
polls close, and
I
then
think
they
that's the
meet
way, and
to
honestly, that's the way it's
regroup.
supposed to work, in my opinion.
regroup.
And you'll
It is.
know.
Yeah.
We've done that.
I
We
agree.
called special meetings
ready.
for 2
Yeah.
weeks And if we ended up finishing early, we canceled the meetings.
Right.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah, I agree.
So,
Okay.
And I also think the public will be, if they're willing to show up for a referendum and vote yes or no, then they're engaged and they expect action right away.
Right.
Now, hey, we'll get to it in a month.
Right.
I mean, I think this actually would generate, and I hate to say it, I hope we never see a
Yeah.
7%, that kind of $12 million expenditure increase, but it would generate some interest from the public, and I would think so. I mean, if it doesn't, then I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
And there's, one last item, if you don't mind, that there's a public hearing in the legislature, I saw it yesterday, regarding charter revision commissions. Of course.
Yeah, yeah,
You're aware?
yeah, sorry.
So, and it, you know how last time Enfield had a charter revision, they had one question, do you approve the changes to the charter, yes or no? And that was the referendum question on the ballot. It has not passed yet, but if it does, it will be effective 7/1, so that will be before us, so it will apply to us. Certain things like changes in residency requirements, changing in elective offices like constables. There's a list of 5 or 6 things, if you change in your charter, they must be separate referendum questions.
Oh, jeez.
Remind me what committee that's in?
Pardon?
Remind me what committee that's in?
Be general.
I don't remember.
GA?
Yeah, I think so, I'd be,
Did you see it, Mike?
yeah.
Sorry.
Did we hit any of those bogeys so far that,
yeah, we removed constables.
We
Constables.
moved constables, we said that we changed the residency requirement for a town manager
Oh, we
from required to
Strongly
suggested.
strongly recommended.
Wow.
Yeah, there were, I think about 4 that we hit, that I skimmed it over quickly,
Yeah.
but, so just giving everyone a heads
But
up.
residency requirement,
No, no,
their laws, Connecticut laws said you can't make them live in town.
So that's crazy, they're
So
gonna make you.
we're not changing the residency requirement, we're removing it. Is that a way to skirt around?
That might be,
right,
but,
sure.
I like that.
I mean, regardless, they're,
Where
did
is
you
it
look,
on the?
Laura, there's several things that,
Yeah.
there were several things that applied to some of the changes we were.
yeah, I was gonna say, so GAU's JF deadline is the 2nd of April. General law is the 24th. We have a little time. I don't.
In any case, I really,
Yeah,
well-
I don't think that
Yeah.
that affects this committee. We made the decisions,
No, we're
it's
affects-
gonna go to council. And the council's gotta make a decision, is it worth having a separate referendum, breaking out issues individually? I mean, isn't necessarily a bad thing,
Yeah,
because
no,
you could
no.
vote down or up one item
Yeah.
and down or up another.
right.
I
So the
prefer it.
whole document doesn't fit.
Versus blowing the whole thing out.
In
Yeah,
one town I worked for, I think we had 12
yeah.
Question.
Charter
And if we're doing
revision
it in the
questions
same
on the
election,
ballot.
like, yeah,
Right.
spectacular.
So, I mean, either way,
Yeah.
but we'll just go this
For that
way. If
purpose.
it passes, then the council's just gonna have to address it.
Side.
Right.
You know?
I just wanted to give everyone's a heads
No, that's a
up.
good
All
idea.
right, thank you for that.
Interesting.
Is that it?
That's all I have.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Perfect timing. Thank you, everyone.
Second.